Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. Have you ever just met someone and immediately you knew that there was just a really amazing connection? Well, Patty Dominguez and I just had a 10-minute pre-conversation before we went live on here. First time I've met her, and already I don't know if you've ever watched Anne of Green Gables, but she feels like a kindred spirit.
I love it.
And Patty is the founder of Positioning to Profit. She's a best-selling author, advisor, and contributing marketing expert. Her work has been featured on Smart Business, Investors Business Daily, New York Daily News, and American Express Open Forum, to name a few. Now, prior to 2013, she worked in Fortune 50 and management consulting as the head of the global agency strategy, managing just under $1 billion. That's $1 billion in marketing spend over her tenure in corporate America. And she now helps service-based entrepreneurs claim their category of one status based on their unique abilities. And welcome to the show, Patty.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm super happy to be here to hopefully share tremendous amounts of value for your audience today.
So, Patty, I loved it is how to create that category of one. So in tune with the author to authority concept. And I'm going to let you loosen a little bit to talk about that. But first, why don't you take a few minutes, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your story, and how did you come to help service-based entrepreneurs? I mean, obviously, you were very high up in corporate America.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I spent quite a few years in corporate. It was like 18 years in total. And I just followed the track that my parents had kind of expected of me, right? Go to school, get a good job. And so my dad's biggest dream was for me to have a very good job that had an office and that I had a car and a cell phone. I mean, he's a blue collar worker, right? So that was the big aspiration. And so I did that. And I was really grateful because I had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest brands in the world. And in that process, I learned a whole lot. And to be honest with you, it was this culmination of working with different brands and being parts of conversations where people were product launching and bringing things to market, bringing new ideas to market. So as I look back, I'm very grateful for that time. It wasn't until 2008, I was at the time in a consulting firm and I was unceremoniously given the pink slip, right? I didn't know any better at the time, but what I realized in that moment, I was like, I can't believe this is happening, but I did the schooling. I got my MBA. I did all these things that I was supposed to do. How can I be like left loose and no explanation? And it was just because of the economy, right? So the
Mhm.
long story short, what I really came to realize is that my job is not an asset. Your job is not an asset. And when
Yeah.
I read on this concept of really creating a business system for yourself, I said to myself, well, I have to figure this out. Again, I came from a blue collar family. Their biggest thing was like, let's get you an education. So I had to take personal responsibility to figure this out.
Mhm.
So I went back to corporate for a little while. Again, very grateful for that opportunity. January of 2013, I worked one day so that I can get my big fat bonus that I had earned because I had to work one day in the new year. And then off I went into entrepreneurship. Now, in that process, I did go through a lot of evolution around I am no longer a corporate person. And I really negated so much of what I had learned. And I said, no more, I'm an entrepreneur. Surely I could figure this out. A little bit of ego there because I was just like, this is it. I'm alone. I'm free. And what I really came to find out is that it is a big challenge to be an entrepreneur. You know that, Kim. And so it's
Yeah.
like really figuring this out. And you could either hang out, go to yoga class, hang out for coffee and say, I'm an entrepreneur. Or you can really realize that you create the environment, the
Mhm.
results. I mean, it's 100% on you. So I had to learn a lot about that. But in that process, I was really trying to find my way. And I had a lot of self-doubt going around, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? And it wasn't until I had a really important conversation with somebody who became a mentor of mine early on, an entrepreneur forever. He had said, listen, entrepreneurs create new money. You just have to create. You have to
Mhm.
be in the position to create that. So there's something about that in that perfect moment that I was like, okay, it's up to me. It's
Yeah.
up to me. And then I reflected back and saying, initially I had positioned myself as a business coach. That's not enough. I was like, well, maybe social media angle, that's not enough. At the time, I was still doing some consulting. And I remember being on a consulting call, and that was like the big epiphany moment. Whereas I was on this consulting call, bunch of people on the Zoom call, brand managers, whatnot. And I was like, wow, all of these people on this call having a conversation about the
Mhm.
positioning of a chocolate chip cookie. So I don't know if you could see there's like a little pillow there, my chocolate chip cookie. It's like right in the corner. But that was like the big aha, like, what? That's it. That's my angle. Because
Mhm.
the big brands understand the positioning of any product in order to
Yes.
differentiate. And in the solopreneur space, we're not doing that enough. We think it's the certification. We think it's the accreditation. We think it's about being on all the platforms and speaking to all the people. Yes, in part. But what I purport is that having the foundational principles of positioning first is the essential so that you can create your category of one.
I loved what you just said there because, people think that they've got to get on the stage first. No, you've got to lay the foundation to get on the stage. If you get on the stage without the foundation, you're not going to achieve any results. You talked about that positioning, right?
Yes,
If you
yes,
don't have that positioning in place so that you stand out above the crowd, because just being on a stage does not cause you to stand out in front of a crowd. Yeah, okay, sorry. You are standing out in front of a crowd, but
technically,
you may
yes.
not enjoy the results you get.
And it's so true, Kim. And it's like, and the idea here is like, position yourself, equip yourself, empower yourself, so that
Mhm.
when you are on that stage, you're in a position so that people are like, wow, she really stood out. He really stood out. That was really memorable. And the idea behind this, the whole game around positioning, is just to capture mind share, to capture attention. Because let's face it, attention, holy cow, you can't get people's attention. They're bombarded with noise. So in
Yes.
a cluttered market, how do you create that white space, the open conversation, so that people remember you? That's what this is all about.
And the thing is too is positioning is so critical because, I have a saying, if you're trying to be everything to everyone,
Right,
you'll be nothing to nobody.
right.
So
That's
when
right.
you're standing on that stage and you don't have that strong message or you don't know who you're talking to, you're not creating any impact on that stage. And I've been on some stages and, the stages I've been on have cost me money because sometimes you have to pay to play in the beginning.
Hmm.
And, I made sure that, my message was clear and I knew who I was talking to because I did not want to waste all that money I just spent to get up on that stage to be unclear.
Exactly. Exactly. Because to that point, the worst thing that you can say is like, oh, well, my product is for everybody. No, it's actually really not. And you can always tell when people answer that everybody needs this. Okay, but we're not mass marketers, institutional brands. Like, you're not talking about McDonald's, or they do that mass market push. We have a little bit more of a challenge here, is that we have to carve out exactly who it is that we're talking to and what is a message that resonates with them. So
Mhm.
it's more important than ever. So don't do the mass institutionalized perspective of like, just putting the message out there. I'm telling you, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So to your
Yeah.
point, if you're investing in getting on that stage, if you're investing in really promoting your book, then you want to be very, very specific around
Mhm.
who the message is for, right? Do you understand them? Do you understand all of the things that matter in terms of crafting the message so that it stands out?
One of the things I love to say is I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I
Right.
mean, think of it. How many brands of tea are out there, right?
Exactly.
I'm a
Exactly.
specific brand of tea for a specific person.
Yeah.
But if I am that person and that person likes me, that person will only use me because I'm their cup of tea.
And that's a really important point, Kim, because how many times do we go into that self-doubt headspace? They're saying, oh, but there's so many coaches out there. There's so many health coaches, or there's so many chiropractors, or there's so many doctors, or there's so many of this, this, and that. But there's only one of you. And so
Yeah.
the idea behind positioning is really highlighting the thing that makes you unique, right? The
Yeah.
thing that makes you stand out. Because I promise you, if you're trying to be just like everybody else, you're not going to stand out. Or if you're trying to follow what that big player in the market, you're only ever going to be the second best version. And it's so inauthentic. And people can sense that. That's like an
Yeah.
energetic thing, they sense it. So, what about looking at who you are and highlighting those personality traits, whatever position you want to stand. There's some people who say, "Oh, I'm Christian based," or they go into their faith based type of,
Hmm.
of approach or political approach, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, just claim your space because it feels aligned with who you are. And I think that's a really important thing. To your point, you're not everybody's cup of tea. That's good. This is not for
Yeah.
either. Is it for me? I mean, I'm in a crazy competitive market in the online marketing space, but there's only one of me, right? So you will attract those people when you claim your space. I think that's a really important point there.
Hmm. Yeah. Like, I'm about almost 7.5 years into being a publisher. And the first couple of years, I was kind of doing everything for everyone. And it wasn't that I
Right.
wasn't making money, but I was working with a lot of people I really didn't want to begin with. And, I couldn't charge the rates I wanted to. But when I niche, however you say it, depends which country you're from, uh, niche down, all of a sudden I could start charging a lot rates because I specialize in one type of book only. I only do one type of book. My books are for entrepreneurs, professionals, speakers, and coaches, and they write these books to build their business. So it's a very
Excellent.
specific type of nonfiction book that generates income.
That's perfect. See, like you have a specific audience in mind. The message is clear, the outcome is clear, right? That promise of how you're going to help them. That's great.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that that's so important in business because people think, well, if I niche down too much, I won't have enough people to sell to. Well, you niche down well enough and you do your job well enough, you don't have to sell to a lot of people because you can charge a whole lot more money for your products and your services. And you don't have to deal with everyone. You can deal with just the people you want to.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, Patty, I'm going to let loose. We've already been talking about this a bit, but I know you have some specific teaching and training that you want to talk about being a category of one. So, I'm going to let you loose for a bit to share on that, and then we'll talk about it a bit more.
Sure. Well, I'll kind of give a little bit of a mini master class on what it means to focus on your positioning. So you're probably thinking, well, is she talking about the website or logo and all that? No, I'm not talking about that. In fact, all of the things that you see out there in terms of branding are focused on the visual outputs, meaning the logo, the website, what kind of graphics and color scheme. And that's good, but you're putting the cart before the horse. And the reason is because the positioning is the equivalent, and I say it this way so that it really is like, oh, I get it now. Where when you think about positioning, think about the dream house, that house of your dreams, the one that
Mm.
if money were no object, you can build it any way that you want. Right? Positioning is the blueprints. It's you're going to pay an
Yeah.
architect to build the blueprints because that's going to be the essential foundation. Unfortunately, it's the unsexy truth, which is why a lot of people don't talk about positioning, but you need the blueprints because if you don't, you have a house of cards. Okay. Where most people focus on branding, it's like the equivalent of the curtains and the wall colors and what kind of couch am I going to have, all the fun stuff. And nobody's telling you to not do the fun stuff, but the important thing is to focus on the positioning first. And it really comes down to I have a framework that I talk about where for me is specifically for entrepreneurs in the service based arena. The first one is internal positioning. And the reason I focus on that first is because I genuinely, thoroughly, wholeheartedly believe that your business results will meet your identity every time, no
Yeah.
matter what. So you can sit there and say, well, I'm a professional and I did this certification. And so I see these self sabotaging behaviors because I also do coaching on this. And I have been very, very much an advocate for working on the internal positioning first, where be honest as you're listening to this, some of us will say, maybe if I take that course, then I'll have enough. Maybe if I take that certification, then I'll be enough and then I'll have enough for me to promote the book that I wrote. Or in order to even write a book, right? we have these stopgaps in the way that we're processing things that hold us back from putting the message out there. So the internal positioning, I have this whole like thing where I talk about it's the triad of her success. I work primarily with
Mhm.
women. And in the triad of her success, it's talking about uh, like self-love, right?
Mhm.
Self-love, just owning who you are, being comfortable in your own skin. It's
Yep.
tapping more into it, into intuition, because your business intuition is something that it's like your internal compass, your true north. And then the other side of it is being abundant. Because if you're in comparisonitis, why does Kim get all the success and then I don't? Well, then there, my friend, there's so many of the reasons why the things are holding you back, right? So we work on that first. In fact,
Mhm.
I would venture to say that work is never done because you're always going to be fine tuning. Like, what are the triggers that I'm going through that is causing this setback or this feeling that I'm getting that I'm not
Mhm.
enough or I'm being in lack or all of these things. It's just a constant thing. The other side of it is that there's a new level, new devil, right? So some clients of mine, they'll go from 5,000 a month to 80,000 a month, for example, and they'll be like, I can't push again, or they'll retreat back to the level that they were because that's their safety zone, right? And
Yeah.
it's in the book, The Big Leap, I went through that too, is to say, oh, I have an upper limit problem, right? I'm in that comfort zone where I'm good up to this point, but then for me to get beyond that, there's some additional work I have to
Mhm.
do. Again, internal positioning. The secondary part of it is external positioning. It basically goes to the fundamentals of
Mhm.
putting together the position that you need. It's your the market, understanding very, very clearly who you are marketing to, who you want to attract. It goes
Mhm.
beyond geographics or the demographics. It really goes into psychographics, right?
Mhm.
Really understanding intimately pain points, their fears, desires, dreams, aspirations, things that hold them back, because that's the language that you're going to use
Yep.
back to that prospect that is going to be a game changer. So much so that the prospect will hear it and be like, oh, it's like she's in my head. It's like she
Yeah.
really understands me. And that's the highest compliment that you can get, right? So that's like the market, the messaging, right? That's where we're going
Mhm.
into the messaging. And then an offer, right? Having the right kind of offers, because if you're not making enough offers, you're not making enough money, right? So a lot of
Yep.
people have those types of things that hold them back in crafting their offer so it's compelling. And then the third and last segment of the whole positioning to profit framework is activation. Most
Mhm.
people start with activation and then they'll say, should I be on TikTok or should I be on Snapchat? It's like, no, 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 we need to do this work first so that then you can take the right activation
Mhm.
approach. Are you most comfortable on YouTube? Like you can
Mhm.
are on LinkedIn. That's where your people are. Exactly that. This is an activation strategy. So that's
Mhm.
when all the tactics come into play. So strategy first, then the tactics, and that's how you're going to create that category one and get the results you're looking for.
I loved what you said back in the beginning there and talking about the internal work. How many times have had people tell me, oh, well, I've got to do this first before I'll be ready to write a book. And yeah, sometimes you're not ready to write a book. Okay, that's a pretty big, hefty thing. But most of the reasons that people give me why they can't write a book are not really valid. They just really aren't emotionally, mentally ready. But you
Yeah.
said something, people are like, "Oh, I've got to have this certification." Can I be honest with you, audience? Nobody cares about your certification.
I have a whole video on that verbatim on my YouTube. I'm like, nobody cares. Legitimately, nobody cares. If you look at the different people, like for example, think about all of these big celebrities. It's because they built the personality. It doesn't mean they have the right accreditations, right? And so, honestly, this thing that we have that we need more certifications is simply not true. It's a self-sabotaging behavior where you're getting ready to get ready. I hate to tell you, but that's what I see. Kim, it sounds like you see the same thing, right? So take inventory and say, it's interesting. Procrastination and self sabotage will show up in really sneaky ways because you think you're doing something, you're actually not. You're actually playing
Yeah,
it super safe and not moving ahead.
yeah. The thing is, and most people know, and I'll tell you a few things that most people don't know. I mean, I was told at 7 years old that I shouldn't write, that I wasn't a good writer. I carried those words around subconsciously for 30 years. Didn't write.
Yes.
Okay, I passed high school, I got A's in English, but I became a publisher in my 40s. I've never been to college or university, and I run a successful publishing company, and I learned how. I had many years of entrepreneurship experience, which helped prepare me for this. But learning how to become a publisher, I just figured it out. And
Yeah,
when I had
because people,
questions,
yeah, I was going to say people are paying you for the results. They're not saying, "Hey Kim, tell me what your GPA was." That doesn't mean
yeah,
anything to the person. They want the results. That's what
yeah.
they're looking for.
My results is I've worked with, well, probably 300 now, but at least well over 200 people to become authors. Many of those books have gone on to be Amazon international bestsellers. I have clients who have sold thousands of books themselves. I have had clients who have spoken all over the world.
There you go.
That's what people want to know. They don't want to know that, oh, I have an English degree. No, they want to know, can I help them produce a book that's going to change their business? The answer is yes. And I think it's the
Exactly.
same for the audience. If you can, the focus should never be on you. The focus should be on what results can you give your clients that will change their lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Patty, I did not get a chance to ask you this question before we got on the show today because we were just having such a wonderful conversation. But have you authored anything, Patty?
Well, that's a great question, Kim. I've been a contributing author in 3 different books. And I have just a little guide that I wrote too. It's a little guide that I wrote. It's called the
Mm-hmm.
Positioning to Profit Guide. And I really use it as a marketing tool, like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned. But I have another book in me, the real book, and there's an angle to it that I'm working toward. I'm working toward, but it's on the docket. It is most definitely something that I want to author, and it's more around what it's taken for me to get to the space where I can say I'm prolific. Right? It's a word that
Yeah.
I use quite a bit, prolific. I have products that use that because being prolific is really standing out. It's being really
Mm-hmm.
special and doing all these things. And I encourage the women that I work with to claim that prolific space. So there's a book
Yes.
around that topic that I really want to author. But again, I want to have, so uh, there's a whole concept. I didn't write it. I wish I had. It's from Kevin Kelly, and I don't know if you've ever heard it, Kim. He has a blog post. It's pretty dated now, but it's still relevant. Yeah, it's called 1000 True Fans. And I think this is a
Mm-hmm.
really important
Yeah.
concept too that everyone should know is that we think we need to have 1 million fans or like, look at so and so, look at Tony Robbins, he has millions across the world. Well, what if Kevin talks about it, it's like, what if I told you it only takes 1,000 true fans, or I don't know if he calls them true fans or raving fans, but that's it. If you had 1,000 raving fans, you can have the business of your dreams, right? Something really
Exactly.
special. And I love that concept so much. I say it all the time because it really helps to place this idea like, oh, that is doable, right? That is doable. And so I'm kind
Well,
of
well,
taking that whole concept in my own way.
that they're not just raving fans; they're brand ambassadors.
Exactly. Exactly. The ones that sing your praises and share your story and buy whatever it is that you have to offer and really would be like, oh, are you having an event? And over there across the globe, I'm there. That's just a dream to work with people like that. Just like you said at the beginning, it's like once you have that specificity of who you want
Mhm.
to attract, it's incredible what happens because guess what? You don't have to work with everybody just because they're knocking on your door. You can be
Yep.
selective. And there's so much freedom when you get to choose who you want to work with, get to choose who your clients are that
Mhm.
become the raving fans or the true fans. And there's something really magical about that. And everybody has the
Yeah.
ability to do that.
You know, I can't say every client of mine because there's just been some clients that just has not worked out. But, I would say 85 to 90% of my clients will not work with anybody else but me
Ooh,
and
that's
my company.
nice. That's great. Kim, that's really impressive. Yeah, that's what you want. It's exactly what you want. Of
right?
course, there's always going to be the little kind of bruised apple, right? That person is like, okay, I bid you adieu. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Our engagement is over, and that's okay because obviously there's no such thing as perfect, right? So that's
Well,
really great.
I've had some interesting people over the years. A little bit more selective now, take a little bit more time in the process. But, I had one person I worked with who we didn't realize at the time was bipolar.
Oh, right.
So
It's
when we started
complicated.
working with the person, they were fine. Everything was good. And then the other side of the bipolar showed itself, and the rest of the journey was very harrowing, let's just put it that way.
Yeah,
And and sometimes you can't tell, and we didn't wish this person any ill will in any sense of the form, but just a very difficult person to work with, because when you're writing a book, it's not just facts and figures. You're putting your heart, your soul, your emotions into
yeah,
these books. You're sharing things about your life that you may not have shared before. And it's like giving birth to a child and putting it out to the world and saying, hey, is my child lovable? And not everybody loves your kid. It
right.
can be very rough emotionally. And
Yeah.
so it really got to this person. But that was one person at the end of the process. We're like, we got through, got the book published.
We learned some things.
Yes. Here's it's a complete side note, but just something I've learned with um, just because different things I've done in my life. I've dealt with a lot of people with mental issues. So here's one thing that I've learned is, when they attack you, they come at you emotionally. One thing this person said is, you don't like me, you don't want to work with me, blah, and the
Mm,
person just went on and on, right? So the
mhm.
emails, that's what the emails would be like. So I told my project manager, I said, you do not deal with that stuff. Don't fall into the trap, because as soon as you tell this person once, oh, we like you,
Yeah, then they open the door. Right, you're opening the door for a lot of that.
right? So if you're working with someone who's, emotionally difficult, you don't deal with the emotions. Okay. Sorry, if you're a life coach, you have to deal with the emotions, but if you're in a general service industry, don't deal with the emotions, because she would give us all this emotional stuff and then she'd say, okay, this and this is wrong with the book. So we never dealt with the emotional stuff. When we emailed her back, it was like, okay, thank you for emailing us. We see you have these concerns about the book. We'd relist the concerns and then we would address the concerns. But we didn't address the emotional stuff, because that's a huge pit. If you fall into it once, then you've got to be emotionally stroking them up all the time.
Yeah, very true.
So, really off topic, but just something I felt like maybe people need to know is, that's how you deal with it. You deal with the problems that are going on with their product or service, but you don't need to feel like you have to deal with the emotional side of it. Unless,
Yeah.
of course, that's your job. And if it is, I'm praying for you right now. So, Patty, we have a few minutes left, and because you've been in a few of these co-written books, there is a question that I ask every author who comes on the show,
Mhm.
and the question is this: what was the good, the bad, and the ugly about publishing those books, writing and publishing those books?
Well, the good is that in each one of those, it was a collaboration where I was invited to it. So it was a really nice opportunity. So I love that whole camaraderie, and I've seen more people do it. I did it quite a while back. I think this was back in 2015, and I'm seeing more people do those types of collab books, and it is really nice to collab. The good, the bad is that for I don't know that there was a bad. I just think that for my own sake, I believe that that's nice, but to me, it's not a book. Like I really want to do my own book. So I'm like, but it's definitely on the docket. I don't know who said the quote of like, everyone has a book in them. I really believe that. And so I won't feel like a real author until I have done that. My own book, right? My own book, my own story, my own captions, my everything, the way that I want. So I think that that's a really uh, something that is very much on a personal life goal that I want to
Mm.
achieve. And I will, I know I will. And then the good, the bad, the ugly. The ugly is probably where I see a lot of these books and people have really beautiful ideas, but it never goes anywhere because they just don't know how to market the book.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of authors with books where it becomes their life's work, and it's sad to see that they don't capture the right type of attention in the book because they
Mhm.
just don't know how to market it, and so they think it's a funnel. I see that a whole lot where people are like, "You need a funnel." Mm, maybe partly, but that's not the whole thing. So I think that people have a lot of confusion in the marketplace of what it
Mhm.
means to focus on your marketing. And I see a lot of that ugly in the online marketing space. I'm in it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm the ugly one. I'm the kind of the one that's over here on the side saying, you don't need that. That's a lot of hot air. And I'm being really kind because I really have a lot of words about that because I see a lot of people being taken. And that's the ugly part of it.
Thank you for not using those words and protecting my Apple good language rating.
That was really hard, but I did it, Kim. No, that like it's on brand for me to just throw in a word every now and then, but I'm being respectful because I am on this platform, so I know how to hold back whenever I need to.
and and we have to shut down because we're just at the end here, but I think what you said is really important. Is it's not just about writing the book. Writing the book is like being pregnant and giving birth, but
Yes,
that's
oh my
only
god,
the
I love
beginning.
it.
It's only the beginning of the journey. You still got to raise this kid.
I love it. That's exactly it. And I'm going to quote you and steal that because I love it because that's exactly what it is people think that this is it. I'm like, no, that's just the start. You're just starting.
Yeah, and like every other parent, you figure it out as you go along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to
No,
continue to search for them and be willing to act on the answers that you have.
you made a really important point, and I could talk about this for an hour, and I won't. But that is the thing where, like, if there's ever a bottleneck in your business, maybe it's time for a who. So it's being resourceful and
Mhm.
asking the right questions and say, well, who can help me with that? And
Yeah.
whenever I presented that, and it's not for me, it's a whole book, but it's the whole concept of like, don't get bogged down with like, oh, I got to do everything. You're not going to do everything
Yeah.
yourself. It's about being resourceful and asking, well, who can help me with that?
It's funny you say that because I've been looking for one specific person for about 4 years now. I've been waiting to move forward with a certain aspect of my business, but I could not find the right person to work with. And I think I
Mm.
have finally, actually, there's two areas. One that's been about 2 years, and the other one's about 4 years. And I think I have finally just found the right two people to work
Oh, that's
with
great.
so
Yeah,
that I can implement those things for 2023. And it's been a long
excellent.
wait, but I knew I had to wait for the right person. Now, not always.
Exactly.
I mean, there's things that you just need to get done, but for me, these were trusted positions. It's going to have a major impact on my business. So I wanted to make sure they were the right person. And I truly
Mhm,
believed when the time was right for me,
mhm.
these people would come. And I think I have finally found them. So I'm excited for. I don't want to say too much yet because I don't have things in place. But once I do, audience, you will be knowing about what's going on.
Excellent.
All I can hint at it for 2023 is just watch out because we're going to be looks like we're going to be starting a pretty amazing community that's going to change entrepreneurs' lives. So that's all I can say at this
Brilliant.
moment.
Excellent, excellent.
So, well, we are out of time, Patty. I think you and I could keep talking forever. I have
Yes,
so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much
fine.
for sharing. And this has been Patty Dominguez and Kim Thompson Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, remember what I always ask: Share it out and let others know. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you on the very next episode. Bye now.